Hello, everyone. This is Eric Pennington, and welcome to the Spirit of EQ podcast. We're glad that you've tuned in. A few things we wanted to tell you at the beginning of the show, and that's this podcast was created to be a tool to help you, primarily to discover and grow your EQ. Science and our own lived experiences confirm that the better we are at managing our emotions, the better we're going to be at making decisions, which leads to a better life. And that's something we all want. We're glad that you've taken out the time today to listen and hope that something that you hear will lead to a breakthrough. Hey, one last thing. We'd really appreciate a review on whichever platform you use to listen. And if you want to, leave some comments about what you heard today, as well as follow and subscribe. That way you won't miss a single episode as we continue this journey. And with that, the show begins. Lianne Lander, welcome to the Spirit of EQ podcast again.
Well, thanks for letting me be here again.
Well, Jeff, she's probably been on the show more than any other guest we've had.
Probably.
And I think maybe it was in 23, it could have been 22, she was like the most listened to episode.
Ooh. Now you have something to live up to.
Are you sure it wasn't just like me and my friends? Maybe like
No. We could ask our producer Brett, and he could probably pull out the analytics for you there. So absolutely. Well, Lianne, I'm super excited about you coming back on the show because we've typically gone to you about creativity. That's kind of been that specialty, kind of the area that we like to focus on when you're on. And I've been thinking a lot lately about authenticity. And I'm going to kind of take a different turn on it today. That it's not so much that we're going to talk about, hey, it's important to find your voice and be who you really are. That's wonderful. I also want to talk about what are the potential downsides if we don't. Because there are some downsides to it if we live an inauthentic life. So think of it. I want to start with this statement with you. I'm going to just try this on for size, okay? A lack of authenticity is what's destroying us from within. Do you think maybe it's not absolutely right. Do you think that's true? Does it have some truth to it?
I personally think it's very true. I've experienced it myself, both in my own choosing, going against my own authenticity, and then also I've experienced it seeing other people.
Right.
It's like we the herd mentality, follow what's safe and do what I guess we think someone else expects us to do. And I don't know why we do this. Like we assume that we're supposed to do something different, and I don't know why we do this. I found out much later in my life. I've always been a creative person. I just always have been.
Yep.
I did a lot of writing in my younger years, and both music and stories. And I chose something that I thought was a little more tangible and safe. I don't know why I thought that was more safe, but I chose first education, and then I went into I got a degree in natural resources. I thought I was gonna, save the world, like in some fashion, but I wasn't being authentic. Although I love that. I love that idea of, conservation, sustainability, and all of those things. I could easily work in that capacity.
Right.
But I ended up getting a job completely different in logistics and supply chain management. It was just a really weird path. All that to say, I found out later, 20 years later or so, my stepmom said, yeah, we just never understood why you didn't go into journalism or some kind of writing. And here I am now. I'm an author and I'm a writer, and I'm doing just that. It catches up with you when you don't expect it. But it's like, why did I have to put myself through so much ridiculousness? And they were great life lessons, don't get me wrong. I wasn't wasting time, so to speak.
Yep.
But I delayed getting to my purpose and my authenticity.
Well, and certainly there's a call here that I think it should be made for our audience, is that we're not here to wax nostalgic and regret, right?
Right. That's no.
Because I think virtually any person could look and say, yeah, back in 1998, I took this wrong turn, and it probably wasn't the wisest, but I did it, so I had to. Everybody's got that. I think what I'd like to see is that, regardless of where you're at on the curve, if there's something in you today that's like saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not who you are, that they'll stop and pay attention. Because Lianne, before we recorded, I played a brief little clip of an interview with a gentleman who was talking about how our pace of our lives has increased to such a level that we're just information gatherers.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know how to slow down enough to get the meaning of the knowledge we're acquiring, right? It's almost like a manic checking of boxes, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jeff.
This isn't my bookshelves, but so many people have bookshelves full of books because they're supposed to,
right?
And have never read them.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm thinking, Lianne, is that the idea of authenticity and creativity, and what I loved about, it might have been the second time you were on, we kind of drew some correlation that, creativity is not just for the musician, the writer, the singer, whatever you want to use, and that it could be for the accountant, it could be for anyone who's involved in solving problems in a corporate setting or whatever. And that sounds very noble, and it is. However, I sometimes wonder if we count the cost of, and we talked a bit about this before we recorded too, about the self-censoring thing, about the which I think is ultimately the one of the biggest parts of inauthenticity, right? This idea that I'm not going to bring this up because I don't think you'll think of me in a high level or maybe in a noble way if you knew that I did that, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine, and obviously the Spirit of EQ podcast is not a political podcast, but it would be the same if somebody says, well, I really like some of the things that Kamala Harris is talking about. Or someone that says, I think Robert F. Kennedy is, or dare we ever say that Donald J. Trump has something that we think is positive, because we read the room and we go, I don't want to. And I think this may come to, Lianne, what you're talking about why do we tend to take these safe paths, I think there's something to say about just that innate desire to belong.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that, if we went back thousands and thousands of years, if you were cast out of the tribe, I mean, that could be a death sentence. It wasn't like you could just choose another one, because that was it. You were either in that group or there, that kind of thing. And I think some ways that's kind of remains today. And our system kind of pushes us into this mode of, well, you better not go outside the lines here. You better not, oh boy, that's risky.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of things. So I'm laboring on, but what are your thoughts about how creativity could potentially salvage, if not nurture, our authenticity?
So I love your point, and I'm a big stickler on creativity comes in so many different forms.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, we always go to the visual, like artistry, writing, all that kind of stuff. But creativity is so much bigger and more important than that. Creativity is a human trait. So we are all creators. I mean, we're created in God's image. God is a creator, and we are created in that image. We are creators of something. So you ask yourself, what am I creating? Because you're creating something. Are you creating chaos? Are you creating joy?
Oh my.
Are you creating something constructive or destructive? And so that's the bigger pictures, because what we do as a vocation, I mean, whether or not you're following your authentic path or not, because at different times in our life, we all are, and sometimes we all are not.
True.
Like we try different things on because we're just trying to figure it out. Where do we belong? And I mean, I worked in logistics for 20 years, and there was a lot of really cool things I discovered in I had a great adventure doing that. It wasn't really my calling by any means, but there were certain things I really enjoyed while I was in that corporate world of logistics, and there's certain things that really sucked the life out of me. But wherever you are, you're creating waves, you're creating energy, you're creating life around you. And so are you using it for the positive or the negative?
I think that is so profound.
So how would somebody use creativity negatively?
Okay, I'll give an example. Well, first I'm going to talk about positive because there's this one example that's coming to my mind. I came through years ago. Me and my daughter, we were just in a hurry. The life of parents were like, gotta go to this and this. We have to run through the fast food window, right? Went through, I think, Burger King, Arby's, or something. I don't know where we were. We pulled up to this window, and this guy, it was like he had the greatest job on earth being the manager of the Arby's and taking our order at this Arby's window. Like, he had just threw so much joy on us, like so much so that my little girl, who was I think 11 or 12 at the time, it left an impression on both of us, like even her, because we got our food and we left. She's like, wow. And I was like, wow, like that, he sold that job. Like all of a sudden now I want to be doing what he's doing. He sold it that hard. And I was like, wow. Conversely, okay, that's a positive, right? And your question was, how can you use creativity for negative? And I would dare to say he's using his creative solving. Sure. He's doing all of that, and that is a great example because no one would think being a order taker or a manager at Arby's is being creative, right? I dare you to flip the myth, right? And think about how he just did that. Like, that was a very creative problem solve. On the flip side, a negative, how are we using creativity for negative? Oh my gosh, I think there's a bazillion examples out there of this. Is like anyone doing their job and just, whether it's fear, insecurity, which are the biggest ones or whatever, I would just use a management style as an example where you're just over controlling your team. You're lassoing and you've got a noose around creativity because you're not allowing it. You are so insecure that when you can't delegate and you can't allow your team, you're supposed to hire people better than you, right? That's what they say to successful people do, hire better than you. I've just seen so many times because I do team building on the side, and sometimes it's really tough because you have some of these teams, and I know right away when we're facing this fear-mongering management style because no one participates in the team building. No one talks. Everyone's afraid. They're walking in eggshells. What if I say the wrong thing? So that's an example of using creativity probably in the wrong way or squelching creativity.
Or the atmosphere they're creating.
Yeah, because you're not allowing.
You said something that's got me thinking about the narcissist, right?
Yeah, I hate that word, but it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I'm thinking about it, there's a psychologist by the name of Margaret Naguib, and I think she's brilliant. And she put something out. This was maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago about. It was, what's one thing that narcissists and empaths have in common is that often their core wound is abandonment.
Yeah.
They experienced abandonment.
Yeah.
The empath goes toward building emotional connection, relationship health, putting people first, some degree avoiding conflict, not wanting, because they see conflict as a separator, right?
Almost to their detriment sometimes.
Almost to their detriment.
Yeah.
The narcissist goes the other direction, meaning I'm going to be the star of the show, and that way you're never going to be able to leave me, abandon me, hurt me.
Right. Yep.
So when I think about creativity, that narcissist might be using their creative skills in order to commandeer all of this attention to themselves for the purposes of what we just described, right? As a defense mechanism,
Yeah, for sure.
or protection mechanism. And what are your thoughts about, in a connector to that, that idea of self-knowledge? And here's where I'm going with it, Lianne. I kind of use this sports analogy. You've heard me use it before, Jeff, about game film, right? Why do sports teams watch game film? Well, their opponent, they want to know what they do and how they do it and how often and all of that. But game film is also designed for them as well. Like, what are our tendencies? Where is it that we typically lag or too fast or whatever? And I want to say, for the audience's benefit, I know that there are some things about ourselves that we would prefer to ignore.
Yeah, for
I know
sure.
that.
Yeah.
And I want to be sensitive to that.
Mm-hmm.
However, even in that sensitivity, there are resources to help you to navigate and to understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's someone that can come alongside of you to help you as you are encountering that part of yourself, right? But if you're not in that place too, right? I kind of believe that gaining more and more self-knowledge, looking at closer and closer at your own game film, positions you to be using creativity for the good and for the healthy, right? To move you forward toward authenticity. So that's kind of where I'm going with it, about the importance of self-knowledge. What do you think about the self-knowledge idea?
I love the framework you set out, because it's very important, because self-knowledge can be very damaging and destroying, and you can use it as a demotivator or to keep you in a victim mindset.
So is that because you've discovered something that you don't like about yourself, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, we all do it to ourselves. I think most of us do it to ourselves. Is like, you can replay the tape on something you've done, or think you've done, or whatever that is, but you replay it, and it's a torture tape. It's round and round, and you lose sleep over it and whatnot, whatever. And that's not helpful. It's not productive, and that is a self-awareness. But to your point, you said in a safer environment or with someone alongside of you, maybe a therapist or a friend or a pastor or whoever you deem someone holding your hand through keeping you out of the gutter.
Yep.
Because that's a real thing. You can go to a real dark place there. That's not productive and not helpful for anyone. And I've had to have some loved people, people that love me, say, okay, nice time there in the gutter. Now time to get out, because you're not helping yourself or your daughters or anyone around you by, staying there.
Right.
When you're
so true.
I'm sorry. When you're looking back, like you were talking about, and maybe some things that didn't go well, what would happen? And this is one of our favorite words, Eric. What would happen if you looked at that with curiosity?
Yes, that's the turning point, and an emotional intelligence requirement. Okay, a more mature way, because that negativity and that downward spiral, that's a juvenile response. It's a easy response, and it's almost subconscious response. That's why we, on a string of stuff, social media, you see on a post, you see like 95 negative comments on only 5 good ones, because that's so easy. Okay, so to get to the place
almost
of curiosity,
it's like threat detection in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going on in the world. It's so fun to just be the bully. That's awful.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be the bully. So to your point, Jeff, the curiosity is almost a key, almost in all the things, because curiosity requires you to pull back a layer and stop being juvenile. It requires you to kind of like, curiosity is sometimes very juvenile too, on the other hand, because you're not so much thinking. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, self-reflection, I think it's really helpful to have a layer of maturity or wisdom going into it, because you have to be ready for it. You have to be ready for the work, and you have to want to make this change.
Okay, so within that, Jeff, in our work, the idea of emotions contain tremendous levels of data for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which would imply, and I am of the mindset that God gave us emotions to help us. They're not there to harm us. Now, someone could say, but wait a minute, he got angry, and well, typically why anger gets a bad name is because of what we did with it when it came knocking.
For sure. Yep.
So here's my point.
Because we're human and we do that.
So instead of me reacting to the anger that I feel in that moment, why don't we ask anger to sit down and give him the mic? And someone could say, well, but I don't have time, and it was this situation. Hear me out, okay? When you give anger the mic, there's another key, powerful thing that I think happens. It subsides. It becomes less powerful.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, anger is like, thanks for letting me have a word here. I've been trying to tell Eric for years about this situation. Instead of me, when I feel the anger, kaboom.
Oh, yeah. Reactive.
Right? I dealt with that coming here today.
Oh, yes.
The people here in the room know that I was a half an hour late because I got involved in something and went, oh, no. So naturally, freeway was backed up.
Of course.
And I was getting angry.
Well, for our audience, I want you to let you know, I was thinking actually Jeff was doing the rock star mode and going to just appear like 30 minutes or an hour late, to keep the audience on edge type thing.
I hate when they do that.
Oh, I know. Don't you? So, Lianne, let's pivot if we could to, toward the positive. We talked about the downside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some ways that you think creativity can help that person with, again, going back to authenticity?
Yeah. So, once you battle through all that stuff, creativity can be such a good friend and so valuable in the self-realization kind of thing. It requires you to, now I'm looking at some of the past things that I've, mistakes or whatever, and I'm no longer looking at them with, that was done to me or I did this because or whatever. You start seeing growth opportunities and you stop wanting to go back and try to fix it. Okay. You're looking at the tape, right? The film, like you mentioned. And rather than finding excuses as to why you messed up here and there, or, well, if they would have done this and moved over, it was their fault because they were in the wrong position and then they messed me up.
Yeah.
It becomes now you're owning it. You're like, I see where I should have just moved up and I could have, next time I will.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, Lianne.
Yeah.
Because that's a great point.
Yeah.
That is creativity in my mind in action. I looked at it at one angle.
Yep. That
really wasn't the full story. I took responsibility at this level.
Yeah.
And hey, I can learn that next time. I think that's creativity. It
is. It's like it wasn't a failure or a disaster. It was, this is so cliche and I have to really look at it from a different angle. It's the same thing that you've heard all over. It wasn't a failure. It wasn't a mistake. It was a learning opportunity. But it really is. But engage your brain on that.
Yeah.
You can say it a million times. And we were talking a little bit before recording. And we're great at doling out advice, but applying it is way harder.
Yes.
So these past 2 years of my life has been the quietest and most peaceful I've ever experienced in my life. Because I've always lived in some sort of chaos or turmoil, whether just consequentially, not my fault, or a lot of times I chose it myself. The spiral just keep going on that cycle. At some point, you got to stop the madness. So all that to say, it's taken me a couple years to just rest, recuperate, and I've now had an adequate time to honestly reflect. And I'm not saying you need the 2 years or whatever. It's just personally kind of where I've somehow, and I haven't just been sitting around for 2 years, you know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Some people can get there quicker than others, but I just felt like all these lessons I'm trying to learn right now to this point around creativity and using negatives for positive, I've been trying to apply those things, and I have little by little. But I feel like I'm making more progress right now because I've had an opportunity to sit with it and rake myself over the coals plenty and, get past that
Yeah.
and embrace those moments and stop being so sad or angry about them and being more hungry about how can I correct? How can I move forward, correct it, and make it a positive? And then to actually practicing it a few times and seeing in the moment, in the heat of the moment, for instance, like some of my core, what do you call it, traits, like my negative traits or whatever. I mean, I can lose my patience, and being able to stop and think in those moments, I can do it more now. You know what I mean? I can do things more like than just say the thing I didn't mean to say. I still am doing that sometimes. I mean, like I'm just being completely vulnerable right now because it's my worst trait. I don't like it. I don't know. I can blame a lot of things. I'm Italian. I've got all kinds of great excuses. Really hard upbringing, all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I'm talking about. Stop with the excuses already. Who cares? We've all had a hard path to get here. So now it's my turn to turn it into and let go of it. And a lot of that has been just a faith walk for me too, is like giving it up and saying, you know what, God, I have tried to do this on my own. And I have, I've entertained this relationship with God back and forth. And I've, had times I've been really close and walked with him. And then I've had periods of my time where I just said, you know what, I don't even know if you're real. So, and I'm mad at you, by the way.
Oh, look at the time. I've got to go.
Right? Shouting.
Yeah.
So for me, it's also been an acknowledgement of something bigger than me, and that I don't have to have all the answers. All I know is that I have to do better today than I did yesterday.
I'm so encouraged and inspired by that, Lianne, because I know from my situation, I brought up the empath and the narcissist. I'm an empath, and that abandonment thing is a real deal. And from that, it wasn't 6 months ago that the light just went on. Like that's that core wound that hasn't been fully addressed.
The child
because
thing.
I was always. And I still have the tendency, you're using that point, and it's well noted. I mean, it's there, right? I think that virtually everybody's looking for the exit sign, and I got to be ready, right? And I mean, I applied this across every relationship I had, every single one of them.
Yep.
Right? There was always something in the back of my mind saying, you better be ready, right? And in that time of the awakening, right, when the light goes on, I had to really do that honest look and go, it's very clear to me I got less time in front of me than I do behind me.
That's big, yeah.
And I say that with optimistic urgency. Okay, I don't have time anymore to think that every person is looking for a way to exit. You know what? And guess what? I might have tons of people that abandon me. But I finally realized there's one person who won't. He has a name. And that awakening made all the difference. And now I can give the mic to my feelings. I can when I feel that apprehension, okay, apprehension, you're on. Here's the mic. To let it speak to me, so that I'm not in this constant mode of like, wait a minute, Lianne's looking at the door. She doesn't want to be here. She doesn't like this podcast. Jeff, what are we going to do? I mean,
the fear.
Brett, did you lock the door?
Right. Besides a locked door suggestion. We lock all of our guests in now, Lianne, because Eric has this issue with abandonment. So that in and of itself, I guess I'm coming to a place where it's like I can let the insecurities, all the stuff, I can let them have their place. I no longer have to figure out a way to banish them and never see them again. What matters is, what are my behaviors? What are the choices I'm making? What's my level of curiosity? Versus again, this constant, and it comes back into, how we, these neural pathways, right, that get developed over time and become well worn. Jeff.
Yes.
Music.
Okay.
What would you say, or what would you ask? I'm going to just do a little improv here.
Okay.
Right? I was telling Lianne about this podcast episode from Mark Marone. I think I got his name right.
Okay.
With Wolfgang Van Halen.
Okay.
You and I haven't talked about it, but you should check out the episode.
Okay.
It's really, really good. Really, really good. So he said something about his dad that was a downside to his great guitar playing, in that it set people off to forget their own voice and try to be him.
Mm.
And he also said you could hear it in his voice. It was a great deal of love. His dad did not intend to do that. He wasn't trying to do that. He was just taking what he had and he was sort of pouring it out. But he said what's kind of sad about it is that it took many guitar players off their eyes off of their voice, and immediately, how do I become Eddie Van Halen?
It's strange. I had my grandchildren right now. They're on a little break, but they were a working punk rock band called Psychotic Tendencies. Anyway, the oldest is Julian, the drummer, and we were talking about that, and he mentioned, Neil Peart, who you've heard about him many times on our podcast,
Yes.
and Keith Moon.
Uh-huh.
And I go, they're great drummers, Julian, but you're not them. Not in your talent, but you're not them in who you are. You play the drums like Julian plays, and listen to Neil Peart and go, how did he do that? But I think that's what's important, is be the creativity that you have.
Yeah, and kind of to pull Lianne into what you were saying even earlier on about why we are, the pressures that we feel from the world system to comply, to replicate, to just be obedient, right, to what the system is sort of. And when someone, maybe it's Julian, right, when Julian fully, let's say he catches fire with what you threw out to him, and he says, "You're right, Grandpa."
And he did.
Okay.
Oh, good for him.
The downside, if not the positive, is he's going to face resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And that resistance from his own neural pathways that said, but, or from the outside forces. So, Lianne, what do you throw out to an audience member that says, as soon as I went and I told someone about this is what I really feel like I'm meant to do, they kind of tried to talk me out of it. They kind of told me it wasn't sensible and it wasn't practical. What do you say to that person?
Here's what I should say, and I want to say, is it's not their dream. And it won't make sense to them. And it's scary to them because it doesn't make sense to them. It's not their calling. It's not their thing.
So would that mean that when we catch, because boy, what you just said, because I've had so many times where the vision comes clear in my head and I run to tell the person and I go, and then they're kind of like, I don't, tons of people have really failed at that before. And you feel then you take the dive along with them going, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have, maybe, no. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. And I have taken that dive. And, it's such a deflation, right?
Yes,
it's
yes,
like,
thank
oh,
you.
man.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's reality. You're so right. Thank you for bringing all those obstacles to me that I already thought of, by the way. But thanks for validating them. And I've let that squash things in me before. But, remembering, because I think somebody, maybe Carrie Oberbrunner is the one who kind of said, don't expect them to understand it. Don't expect them to even cheer you on because they're fearful for you. And they may be well-intended fears because they love you.
Right.
And they just don't want to see you go down, just like we were kind of talking about with our kids earlier before we were recording. We kind of see where maybe we see their tendencies, we see where they kind of fit better. But on the other hand, we got to be real careful not to talk them right out of something, right? That for some reason we just don't know what they're supposed to do. So remembering the constraint that other people have when we're trying to tell them what we're so excited about is they've got a whole different, set of values and things, and they weren't given the weird gift that we were given. And sometimes it's just like off the wall ideas. This art form that I'm kind of like wanting to go into right now, and I keep fighting myself on because it's so weird. I don't see a lot of people doing it, if maybe anyone. And so that's exciting, and it's also terrifying. And when I tell people, some people are like, oh, that's really interesting, that's really cool. And then there's other majority of people are like, that's kind of, I don't know, what do you do with that? It doesn't matter. So it's like, it's a nag, it's an inner nag, and don't expect anyone else to understand that inner nag, because they're not having that same one.
Would you say, though, that you have people, and maybe it's a very small group of people, who, though they may not necessarily understand it, but they are in your corner, right? Meaning they're spurring you on, encouraging you on, even with caution and, all of that. Do you have that in your life too, or?
Yeah, sure. I have got a couple people and I really respect their opinion, and, they kind of understand that path and what it would take. Yeah.
I think that's important, that the people, like you were describing, understand you.
Just like you with your grandson. I think it's so powerful what you said to him. That's so amazing that, you're reminding him to be you. What a great, he's so lucky to have you.
And we'll be back to the episode after this. Jeff, what is the SEQ Development Report?
I'm glad you asked me that, Eric. The SEQ Development Report is something that we here at Spirit of EQ have developed to blend the idea of emotional intelligence with a person's spiritual life. And we're not talking about religion, we're talking about how they connect with themselves, other people, and the world around them.
Why is it important?
I think it's important because it allows someone to see where they stand, to give them information about maybe parts of their life they may need to work on, parts of their life that they're really doing well, and learn to leverage it. And it just gives a person a better way of getting through the world.
So how do you get this report?
Well, first you need to contact us. Info at Spirit of EQ is just a great way to do it. Then you would take an assessment, 15, 20 minutes, done online. And then after that, the report requires a debrief to go through all the things in it, because it's got a ton of information. And then if you want to further your journey, we can do coaching and things like that with you down the road. And that's basically it.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. And now back to the episode. Well, there's this other idea, and Jeff, we were talking about it earlier, that there's something that gets torn in ourselves when we are not authentic, and there's something that is taken away from the world when we're not authentic. And I want to clarify for the audience and for you guys, I'm talking about perpetual inauthenticity versus isolated. There's always going to be that time we can look back on it where we thought, you know what, I should have said something different. I didn't. I kept quiet, and I should have said something. But if you're doing that all the time, if you're always self-censoring, you're always kind of gauging the room, is the damage it does to your soul and to the world at large. I don't think there's enough attention being played to that for the individual, because sometimes we think, you've heard it, I've heard it, well, I had to take the job. I had to do this. I had to, and the reality of that is that if you say that you had to, did you count the cost as well to your soul, who you are, right? Because there's no you can't only focus in on what would be your upside and rationale for doing something. You must also factor in, what did it cost you? Because there's always a price, right?
There's a line in a Rush song: "We will pay the price, but we will not count the cost."
Bravado.
Yes, one of the best songs.
Oh my
for that.
gosh.
It talks exactly what we're, talking
That was
about.
probably written by.
Neil Peart.
I have to bring them up every
See,
single time.
I know.
Leanne,
Sometimes multiple times.
Brett, do we have a commercial break? Because I'm now I've got the song in my head and I'm going, man, what a line.
But you literally just said it before.
Yeah. Wow. So let's go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
I don't know if we've specifically talked about it, but how much of being authentic to yourself is involved in this? We kind of talked around it, but what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, even trying to decipher in what is that. I mean, that's one of the hard parts that we face as a society, as being human, is like, what is it? What is our authentic self? Especially, I don't know. I mean, every generation, I think, has had their noise and, different reasons for not finding their authentic self. But that's one of the hardest parts, is just like taking the time to listen, to hear that and recognize it. Because, I wrote a book, Sunny the Firefly, and I didn't realize it was kind of a self-biography. Looking back on it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm Sunny. Because Sunny tried everything else. Because he wasn't lighting up his little light. He just, so he tried doing what everyone else could do to light up. And I've definitely been guilty of that in my life. In my inability to recognize my thing, my authenticity, because I've been confused about it. So, one, being even able to recognize it. So that is one of those things that require you to maybe even ask some people around you, say, and give them time. Say, what are some things you think I'm really good at? Because it's deeper than just a label on a card. Like, a lot of us, okay, we have our business card and it says a thing, like, for me, if it's artist, author, whatever. But what's the deeper calling, the authenticity? I think you call it your noble goal, right?
Yeah.
It's a noble goal, which then really fuels and drives all these other things.
What makes you an author or an artist?
Yeah.
Getting to that deeper thing. So one is just finding it and recognizing it, because the other thing that happens is it comes so easy to us that we completely dismiss it, because we think, oh, everyone can do this or that. And we completely miss that it's kind of special to us. Like, I'll use my oldest daughter as an example. She has a real gift with older people. Like, she has a compassion, she sees them, and she makes them feel seen. Mm-hmm. And that, I'm like, kiddo, that is special to you. Like, not everyone can do that. And so just that alone, like having someone kind of say that to you, like, hey, that's something special. And then to your point, I'm long-winded to get this, like, what is the price for not following through on that? Oh my gosh.
It's a heavy one, isn't
it? Confusion. You, like that man who lives a double-sided life, like mentioned in James, you don't stand for anything, you're confused about who you are because you're not stepping up to claim it, and you're left subject to be whoever someone needs you to be, and then you're a chameleon and you're a shapeshifter, and you don't know your own mind. And that comes at a huge cost for you and everyone around you, because it causes confusion. And I think it holds a lot of people back from just being successful in whatever they're trying to do because they're trying to be too many things for too many people.
And you know what, Lianne?
It's exhausting.
The reality, I've heard it said that some people find the anxiety of their current circumstances more acceptable than the anxiety comes with the unknown, right?
Sure.
And in fairness to those who come to that crossroads where maybe they get a glimpse of who they truly are, and the road that leads from that is not one that's just paved with gold and you can see it for miles and miles.
Yeah, it may not be easy for sure.
Yeah, oftentimes it's not. But here's some good news. And I've used this analogy in multiple settings, maybe even on this show, is that it's kind of like if you decided that you're going to build a new home. You're going to hire a builder and they're going to build a new home, brand new. The builder has plans to show you this is what the final product will look like, the final house. This is how the roof and the number of rooms and the landscaping. And that's obviously the thing that gets us excited about building a new home. But not long after you sign the contract with the builder, there's going to be someone digging a hole in the ground. It's going to be a lot of dirt. It's going to be a lot of gravel. There's probably going to be things that aren't very, very pretty at all.
A lot of swearing from the construction crew.
Mm-hmm. Delays. Right? All that.
All that destruction, trees,
all
those
of it,
things.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Lianne, what if you decided to give up and say to the builder, this is not going to work. This doesn't look anything like. The builder would say, but Lianne, it's going to take us about 9 months to get to the finished product. This is the beginning. We have to lay a foundation, and then maybe, hopefully you say, oh, that's right. It doesn't happen overnight. My encouragement for anyone that's in that place at the crossroads, it doesn't have to be the completed picture tomorrow.
It usually is not.
I very rarely, right? So if indeed that's true, and my experience lived says, yeah, there's a lot of mud and dirt and delays and swearing and all of the above. So why not just be in that moment and watch the progression over time? Because a builder will more than likely tell you progress compounds over time, right? Because once you get the foundation in,
framing,
then you can get the framing, and then when you get the framing in, you can kind of go, I can
put
see
the roof on, and then you can
and it builds and it builds and it builds. And I know it's easy for me to say that on a podcast, but I think that is very much an important thing to remember when you come to that crossroads of discovery.
For sure.
Because so many people, I think, when they do kind of get that glimpse of who they really are, they kind of look back and go, well, at least I know how being a chameleon is. I know how to be a chameleon. I don't know how to be this new person. I would just say, don't give up. Just make some steps of progress. Just take another step, because the reward for it is so much greater than if you stay in that chameleon zone. So just for the purposes.
Well, it comes back to like that saying, the devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
Sure.
And there's also the idea of like the fear of failure versus the fear of regret. You know, you have to get to a place where you're like so tired of yourself. You have to get so sick of, like with this book, for instance, is a great example of what you're saying. I wrote that book 15 years ago, maybe more. I wrote the book, and, I kept thinking, I'll do it, but the idea was so scary. And also I started digging the foundation in the hole, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a scary looking hole, and I don't know what to do next. And so I just cover the hole back up and walk away. And I kept talking about it, and I'd get so sick of hearing myself talk about it. I stopped talking about it. And then I finally, got to this different place where I'm like, you know what? If you think about the builder, the homeowner, it's a team of people. It's not just the homeowner doing it, and it's not just the builder doing it, and it's not just there's a bazillion people involved, right?
Yeah.
Like when you see a movie and the credits come down and you're like, how And why are there 20,000 people listed
involved
here
in this project? Yeah.
And you read what they're doing, you go,
My
I don't even know what
gosh.
that is.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's so similar, and you're so true, so right in saying that it is not easy embracing your authentic thing. And it won't happen overnight. Sometimes it's years in the making. But the other thing is, you don't have to do this alone. Like, I kept thinking I was going to illustrate this book because I'm an artist. But guess what? I kept getting in my own way. And because I don't do art in this way.
Right.
I'm not good at that. And I thought, oh, well, I'll learn. And I just think, I have to. And the same thing can be so true with like the house. You'll never build the house if you have to do it all. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you employ help. It requires some humility, and it requires you to surrender some expectations of how you thought it might have to go.
You might be able to erect the house, but you're not going to be able to do all the stuff to get erected.
That's right. You can't put all the things on the roof yourself. So, giving yourself a little grace and realizing almost everything requires collaboration. Like, you usually don't get to the finish line. Even these athletes, the Olympics going on, that person who got to that finish line or whatever, they did not get there alone. How many people got them there? The parents, the coaches, the teammates, and everything. You know what I mean? Like, none of these things, none of them is an individual solo sport, even the ones that look like it.
Yeah.
So don't forget that. Mm-hmm. Bring people along. Ask for help. How do I get an ISBN number? I don't know. I had to find out how to do those things. I had to find someone who knew.
Well, and there's the other part too, for me, is the cost to the world when we don't.
Yeah.
Because I think, Lianne, if you would have stayed in that zone of, I don't know enough, or I don't have the resources,
Mm-hmm.
You would have robbed the world of your book.
Mm-hmm. So true.
And I believe we can take that and multiply it across multiple areas. So maybe the chameleon has succeeded. That strategy has succeeded for someone for a while, and succeeded maybe in all the ways that the world system applauds.
Yeah. Gets
Titles, notoriety, money, whatever you want to use as the validator. But it's funny when there's something about being a human being. Eric never leaves Eric alone. Eric never is quiet about those core things. And do I believe someone can become so calloused and stone-hearted that they don't hear that nudge, or they don't feel the nudge anymore? Nah, I'll leave that to the philosophers and the theologians. But I firmly believe the world is waiting for more authentic people to stand up. And I think, Lianne, not to embarrass you or give you a sense of how would I say it? I don't want to make your head big. But your journey has been an inspiration for us, because it shows that when you lean into your creativity, to who you are, wonderful things happen. Yeah, and yes, there is the falling down. Yes, there's the times of doubt. Yes, there's the trouble. But that's all a part of the dance too.
Well, my little Sunday night group is in the middle of falling upward.
I remember that. That's a book, is it not?
Yes. Yeah. It talks about this. It's a fellow named Richard Rohr. I don't know if you're familiar with
him.
Oh,
yeah.
He talks about the first and second half of life. And I won't get into a lot of detail, but to get to the second half, you have to fall upward. So there has to be these things that happen to get you up. And it's the second time I've went through the book with a group, and it's really interesting how you have to take these things and then grow from them, is what he talks about in this book.
Right, yes. Yes. A little bit what we were talking about there earlier is you have to own it, and want.
He has a concept in there. He calls it the noble soldier, which is this thing inside you that protects you until you don't need it anymore.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of cool.
I love that.
Yeah. Do you think, as I know we're getting close to the end of the show, this idea of, and I guess I'm also trying to put myself in the position of the artist, not the artist, of the audience. I had artist in my other part of my brain. Sorry. And wanting to know, like, okay, well, where do I start? What do I do here, right? And I get it. And for those in the audience, we'll have Lianne's information in the show notes, along with her wonderful book, where you can purchase that. But so Lianne, something small. I mean, if I'm at that crossroads and I'm deciding what's my first step or two, what would you say from a creativity perspective?
Well, getting back to, creativity in any role, and I want to make sure to not just like talk about the artist and writing roles, because you had mentioned something earlier. It made me think the cost of not doing the thing. I mean, like, think about if Einstein would have listened to all the naysayers. You know what I mean? Like, people who are inventing cures. I mean, in order to create a cure, you have to do something no one else has done before. You have to do something kind of crazy. You have to like go down a path just because you think, or maybe there's data and science leading you there.
You might wonder what that mold on the bread can do.
Exactly. It requires a why, right?
Yeah.
The why, the curiosity, instead of the, that's already been done before 1 billion times. And,
Right.
Like dismissing it.
Yeah.
And I think about how much the world is losing even currently because social media or all these other time sucks. I mean, and those people trying to emulate Eddie Van Halen or whoever else that is just so wonderful. Neil Peart, like everyone's trying to drum like him. And so reminding yourselves completely that's the hardest thing, Jeff, I think, is that advice. And I've seen it with the Olympics too, like comparing Simone to all these other famous athletes, and everyone says, no, she's the first Simone. Like, Simone isn't the next so-and-so, the next so-and-so. No,
they
she
can do
is
things she can't, but she can do things they couldn't.
Right. Gosh, just reminding ourselves and our children and our grandchildren and of that fact alone. But so this applies to all the things. I don't care if you're in finances, like whatever. It just requires you to follow a prompting, something that you're like, oh, because you have a filter. You have a special way of seeing the world that no one else does.
I want to go back to your fast food guy.
Yeah.
He was not creating something you could hold. He was creating...
It was an experience.
A feeling.
He was creating an experience. He was creating an environment.
Yes, true.
And I don't think there's anything more important than that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, relationships, it really comes down to that in the end. And so, and I think this is a whole different topic, the relationship thing. But I think it ties in nicely to it, is because along the way, like in this book alone, like I didn't cross the finish line alone. And the illustrator that I did end up picking, we helped each other along the way. Like, it was almost like a sack race, like when I was like almost fear mongering, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like anxiety ridden over in the next step. She'd come along and say, we got this together. Let's just take the one step forward. And the same vice versa with her. I had to talk her off cliffs too. So what are the next steps for these creative people, no matter where they are? That was your question, getting back to it.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Is you're not in it alone. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, you do have to be careful because you can like the wrong people.
Yeah, the wolves. Yep.
The naysayers.
Yeah.
Find some like-minded, even if it's just one person. That's all you need. I just needed my illustrator in the beginning to face the world, but just someone to validate.
And I don't
think
the like-minded person doesn't have to be like-minded in what you're doing.
Yeah.
They have to be like-minded in...
This can be done.
This can be done, yeah.
Philosophical, right?
Mm-hmm. A cheerleader.
Yeah. And I would throw out as well, I think there's tremendous value in pursuits that will help you discover more and more about yourself. That could be assessments. That could be having a coach. It could be the reading of certain books, listening to certain podcasts, whatever it may be, anything that continually takes you there. And I would just say, with loving caution,
Yeah.
if you find yourself encountering that same field that brought so much heartache, trauma, whatever, you don't have to go it alone. Kind of comes back to what you were saying. There are therapists, there are friends, counselors, whatever is the need to help you navigate that. But I think ultimately, there's nothing inside of a human being that they have experienced that cannot be transformed into something good and positive.
Oh, I love that. That is so true.
Yeah.
That is one of the best stories ever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do believe that's true.
You know, I know Eric and I, well, we had mentioned it before, but I'm involved in a prison ministry called Kairos. And in the course of the weekend, the team members, they have a talk they have with an outline, but in that outline is a place for them to relate, to talk about their struggle. And that's what the residents, these inmates, remember 10 years from now. They don't remember what he was talking about. They remember his story because they can relate and they understand that this is a real person talking to me.
Yeah, for sure. It's the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not the successes. It's not, how great somebody achieved something so wonderful. I keep going back to the Olympics. I don't know why. But, like the gold medal. Yeah, but it's the stories in the Olympics, right? That you remember, that those heart tugging, those things, or whatever they relate.
That English fellow, Eddie the Eagle, the ski jumper guy. This is several Olympics.
Oh, it's a while ago. Yeah.
He was horrible.
I vaguely remember.
It kind of makes me think about the breakdance lady from Australia.
Australia.
Or the gun shooting guy. Everyone loves him.
Yeah, it looks like he just dropped the kids off and, you got to go do the Olympics now.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, and then, I'm sorry, there was an Australian speed skater that got the gold medal because the first three guys tripped. And he just kind of coasted by him.
Fate has no respect for persons, right? Oh,
well,
wow.
on the other side of that, though, is that one story of the guy who, the runner, the long distance runner, and he got confused to where the finish line was,
Oh, yeah.
and he fell. And then the other guy
That was in second
breezed,
place.
Yeah, he could have breezed right by him and got that gold, but he went back and helped the guy, and he got the other guy got the gold, and they said, "Why didn't you just get the gold yourself?" And he said, "What would be the joy in that? He had won the race."
Yeah, I didn't earn it.
Oh my gosh,
I read
that's
that
huge.
story. Yes.
But in the end, it's these relationships. This is a whole nother tangent, and you can edit this out if you want, I guess. But I'm just learning about the whole NDE things, near-death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm reading them a lot and listening. I'm consuming all this information. But the most interesting thing, the takeaway is in the end, it's all about relationships and how you made people feel, that people who come back and live through those things and talk about the film. People talk about maybe play the tape or the review of your life. Some have this and some of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
But through all of it, everyone who was kind of sent back into this world or whatever, they all are saying it's all about how you made other people feel. It's all about that relationship. So with this whole creativity thing, again, asking yourself, like, am I using this for a good cause? Am I, using it to promote, other people's successes and that kind of stuff? Or am I, hanging on to it out of some kind of insecurities and causing damage, to your point? Because it's the damage, the collateral that we're causing by not allowing things to flow. But it's so human to do that.
It is. And Lianne, though we all could find evidences of where we missed the boat in doing it, but I think I've used this analogy, or maybe it's a practice more so. If you want to know whether or not what you're involved in is the right thing, ask yourself, is it moving you forward or is it moving you backward? That simple little question, that series of questions, I guess, will tell you a lot. And I would say that in relationships, in your relationships, are you helping people move forward? Or are you causing them to move backward? And I know in the marriage confines, that one can be a little bit of a gulp, but ask your spouse.
Yeah.
Do you feel like I'm helping you move forward, or do you feel like I'm causing you to move backward? I think, though we won't be perfect at it, we always want to be focusing on how do I help people move forward.
And you can never minimize the importance of an apology.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna mess it up every
Which
day.
is, to me,
that
that right there is the essence of a powerful move forward. Because how do we typically feel when somebody humbles themselves to say, I messed up, I was wrong, I'm sorry? That is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. There may be some out there who would say, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. But outside of those folks, most situations, someone who humbles themselves to a level of being able to say, I got it wrong, I made a mistake, that's a sign of character and strength.
Yeah, for sure. And even more so, like the 180, the repentance apology, not just like, oh, my bad, I'm sorry.
What was the saying?
That is not going to be the same as I am deeply sorry. I wounded you, and I recognize it. I am actually kind of embarrassed by it or hurt by it. And how do I correct this moving forward? Or like just even like recognizing, hey, I recognize that moment that I kind of like went Hulk, or just like I just went rogue, or just off the rail. Or
I threw him off when saying about the saying. Let me do the saying.
Okay.
I promise. So the saying, the purest form of apology is change.
Yes, that's it. Nice and simple.
Right. All right.
And then what I was going to say
Yeah.
goes right into it. If you have two children, there's always going to be a time when you have to make one of the kids apologize to the other kid. And how genuine is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Leanne, as always, we're
Yes.
so glad to have you back again. And we'll have you back again sooner. I was thinking the last time was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. But time is flying, and we look forward to when you're back again.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoy talking with you guys. It's always just so organic and wonderful. Thanks for being such great and gracious hosts.
Absolutely.
You guys are great at this.
And for our audience, we thank you for tuning in as well, and we look forward to the next time we're together. Take care. Hi, everyone. This is Eric again. A couple of things as we've ended the show. We hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, you're tuning in on a regular basis. We'd love it if you would give us a great review on whatever platform you're listening to the podcast. It's so appreciative and helps us as we try to get more exposure for the work we do and the episodes that we publish. And we're grateful to you as a listener. The second thing is, just remember, our content is for educational purposes only. It's not intended by any stretch to diagnose or to treat anything that may be occurring in your life or anyone else's life that you may be connected to through the podcast. But once again, we appreciate you tuning in to the shows. And as always, we look forward to the next time that we're together. Take care.